What did Jesus really mean when he said, judge not? They're some of the most famous words ever spoken, but they're also some of the most misunderstood. So let's dive in and find out what they reveal about us and about God. Have you ever noticed that? A flaw, a mistake, a little weakness in somebody else, it just seems to jump out at you in crystal clear high definition. It feels so obvious in them, but somehow so much less obvious when we look in the mirror. And this creates this tension that, well, every single one of us lives with. We see wrongdoing out in the world and we demand justice, right? But for our own failures, we're quietly hoping for a little understanding, for some grace, for just a bit of mercy. And it's right into this universal human feeling that Jesus speaks these words. They sound simple, almost gentle at first. But what he says next shows he's targeting something way, way deeper than just being critical. To really get his point, we have to understand that this is not a new problem. Jesus is diagnosing a kind of spiritual blindness that has been a part of the human story from the very, very beginning. The image Jesus uses here is it's shocking. Can you imagine the crowd hearing this for the first time? They probably would have laughed out loud. A man with a giant 2x4 sticking out of his own eye, trying to perform delicate surgery on a tiny little splinter in someone else's. It is completely absurd, and that was exactly his point. You see, this whole struggle for moral sight has a long history. It all started back in Eden with the desire to decide for ourselves what's good and evil, but that knowledge, it quickly became a weapon we used to blame each other. Jesus' teaching calls us back to a much more humble way of seeing, and it points us toward a future kingdom where justice and mercy are finally made perfect. And this just perfectly illustrates the pattern that has repeated ever since. We put other people's tiny little flaws under a microscope until they look absolutely enormous, while the massive obvious blind spots in our own lives, well, they shrink down to almost nothing. So, when Jesus talks about the beam and the splinter, he is not telling us to just abandon moral truth or turn a blind eye. He's giving us a divine diagnosis for our moral blindness. His real target isn't discernment, it's hypocrisy. So here's the crucial point. Hypocrisy is the thing that distorts everything. It's that spiritual condition where we condemn a behavior in someone else that we quietly permit or excuse or even redefine in our own lives. And then Jesus gives this profound warning. He says the standard you apply to other people, that becomes the standard applied right back to you. It's like this spiritual law of returns. The very yardstick you hold up to the world will inevitably be held up to you. But he doesn't just diagnose the problem. He actually gives us a prescription for healing. And you've got to notice the order here. He doesn't say ignore the splinter in your brother's eye. He says first, deal with your own massive issue, acknowledge it, and with God's help, remove it. And only then, from a place of real humility and clear vision, are you able to genuinely help someone else. And this is where the whole teaching pivots from exposing our problem to revealing God's solution. And that solution isn't some new technique, it's a person. Jesus himself, the merciful judge. Just think about it. The only human who ever lived without a beam in his eye was the one speaking these very words. He saw every single person with perfect, undistorted clarity. He was the only one truly qualified to be the judge. And what did he do with that perfect sight? He didn't use it to crush people. He moved toward them with mercy. Now, this doesn't mean we become naive or blind to danger. A few verses later, Jesus actually warns his followers not to give what is holy to dogs, which means some things are just too precious to be trampled on. He's making a really crucial distinction. Showing mercy doesn't require abandoning wisdom, and having discernment doesn't require a condemning spirit. So Jesus holds these three realities in a kind of perfect balance. Humility, which always starts with our own faults, mercy, which extends grace to others, and discernment, which wisely sees the truth. We tend to pick one and throw away the others, but true righteousness holds them all together. And this balanced kind of righteousness, well, it gives us a picture of our ultimate hope. You see, Jesus is describing the ethics of a coming kingdom, a world where everyone will finally see clearly. Just look at the contrast. Human cultures, our world, it tends to swing between two extremes. On one side, you've got harsh, hypocritical judgment, and on the other, you've got this moral confusion where nothing is right or wrong. But in the kingdom of Christ, justice and mercy are finally one. Truth is never used as a weapon. It's an instrument of healing.
and all that hidden hypocrisy is replaced by genuinely transformed hearts.
So you see, this teaching is so much more than just some self-help tip or a nice moral platitude. Jesus is preparing his followers to live as citizens of a coming reality, a kingdom where every hidden being will be revealed and every distortion healed. And all of this brings the entire teaching right back to us, right here, right now. It becomes a deeply personal invitation to examine the way we see the world and all the people in it. So, the real question for each of us is, what's the lens we're looking through? Do we look at others with a sense of moral superiority? Do we live in denial of our own brokenness? Or maybe we even look with contempt? The path to clear vision, the very beginning of healing, it starts with this one simple, humble admission. The moment we can honestly say to ourselves, I too need mercy, our judgment starts to soften, compassion begins to grow, and our sight, it begins to clear. And this is why this teaching matters so deeply today. In a world that is so quick to accuse and divide, Jesus offers a better way. And it's not weakness, it's the beginning of true strength. Face yourself honestly, receive the mercy God offers you, and only then can you begin to see others with the gentleness they so desperately need. You know, the ultimate hope in all of this is Christ himself. He is the great paradox, the one judge in the entire universe who willingly chose to die on behalf of the very people he had every right to condemn. So as we close, just let that settle in for a moment. He is bringing a kingdom where mercy and truth are finally one. And it all begins today, in the heart that is willing to remove its own beam. So the question for us to reflect on is this: what part of Christ's future kingdom gives you the most hope?